Hey everybody, welcome back to Noggin Notes. It's an original podcast, first time in several weeks. We spent the last few weeks rebooting some of our favorite episodes with regard to emotional functioning. I love emotional functioning. It forms the foundation of everything I do in my career. And if you haven't listened to those episodes, please go back and do so. I think you can find some great insight into your own life and modifying the way that you interact with the world. So I'm glad for the break. I'm glad to be back. This interview today is with a very special person. His name is Donald Conti. He is the father of Christian Conti, who has been on this program multiple times and to whom I pay reference many times as well. We talk about a broad range of subjects, everything from biology to geology to psychology and lots of other ologies. He's a really sharp individual, spent time as a professor, wrote some policy, really cool stuff. And presently he maintains a blog called thisisnotyourpracticelife.com. Go check it out. He writes really, really well, and he integrates a lot of really cool concepts across all disciplines and makes for good, really good brain fodder, I think. I enjoy it. That's why I wanted him on the show, is to just talk about stuff, and we did, and I think you'll find it useful. I found it useful and educational, and I think you will too. I'm not going to say any more because the rest of the show is pretty broad-ranging, so enjoy it. In the meantime, please visit our sponsors. Zephyr Wellness is one of them. Zephyr Wellness has been with us since the beginning because that's the company that I co-own here in Northern Nevada, and we provide mental health outpatient counseling services. Check out our YouTube channel for really cool information on lots of things related to counseling and psychotherapy. Check out our Instagram and Facebook and Twitter accounts also. We're trying to post, free information and retweet stuff and that kind of thing, all to help make everybody's lives a little bit better. Also, if you're not familiar, go check out Audible. If you haven't heard of Audible, or if you've heard of it and haven't tried it, you get a free 30-day trial through Noggin Notes. If you go to audibletrial.com/Noggin Notes, you can get your free 30-day trial, and along with that free trial comes one free audiobook download. And it doesn't have to be a book. It could be any of their audio content. And they truly have an unmatched selection of content. Their library is incredible. So if you get that free 30-day trial, you're not going to be unhappy. But for some reason you decide not to continue it, you get to keep your free download anyway. So audibletrial.com/Noggin Notes. Show us how much you appreciate us. And show us how much you appreciate us even more by giving us a rating and a review wherever you get your podcasts. Please rate us high. That would be great, because the higher the ratings, the more people see it. And the more people who see it, the more people listen. The more people who listen, the more lives we improve. And that's really all we want to do. We're not making any money off of this, and we're just giving it out for free. So share around with as many people as you can. In the meantime, I hope you enjoy this conversation I had with Don Conti. It's really good, and after you listen to him, it's no wonder why his son does so well in his profession as well. Enjoy, folks. Today we have Donald Conti, who is if you've been following the show much, you know that I reference another Conti, and his name is Christian Conti. This is Christian's dad, Don. So, welcome to Noggin Notes, sir. How are you?
Thank you. I'm fine. How are you doing?
I'm awesome. And you're in Pennsylvania. And I always wonder, I don't know if I was asked, but how is the weather there? We're in spring right now.
It's always variable in spring. I mean, you go to a baseball game one day in spring and you freeze, and the next day sun's out and you're fine.
That's
last night I watched a high school game that my one grandson played, and I was in a T-shirt, and the sun was beating down on me. And a few days before that, I was wrapped up in winter clothes watching my other grandson play a college baseball game. So it's always variable, highly variable.
You got grandkids in college. I want to talk about that, because I want to talk about grandparenting and retirement and stuff like that. But I think we should probably start with an introduction about, who you are and what you've done in life and that kind of thing. Because the way that I've connected to you, obviously, is through Christian. But then you also write a blog regularly called "This Is Not Your Practice Life," and I love the title, but I really enjoy your writing as well. So, talk a little bit about that and like what your career was and all that stuff.
Okay, well, I've had, I suppose, diverse experiences, as everybody usually has, especially when you reach this grand old age. But I can remember my first job as a garbage man. Went through things like being a construction worker, a jackhammer operator, which is probably one of the reasons I can't hear very well, and a number of other jobs, janitor, etc., truck driver. But I went to college, and I had no real guidance except my father said, when I said to him, well, if I went to college, what would I major in? He said, well, you're relatively good at English, so why don't you major in English? So I did, got that degree, and then ended up just 3 years later, probably at age 24, as an English professor in one of the state universities. And from that, I taught something like 10, 11 years, but I was handed one of the tasks of the department to teach scientific and technical writing. So I thought, I really should pick up a little more science. So I started to take more science courses. And then one day, the chairman of the Department of Earth Sciences said, would you come teach for us? I said, well, why do you need me? He said, well, we're losing our oceanographer. So I took a sabbatical, went to an oceanographic institute, the Rosenstiel School of Marine and Atmospheric Sciences in Miami, which is a research division of the University of Miami, and studied oceanography, geology, came back, and I started to teach the earth sciences, specializing in oceanography, but of course that involves marine geology and that involves other geologies. So I ended up, at the end of my career, I typed up a page, single-spaced one day, of the different courses I had taught. And I filled the entire page with a number of different courses I had taught over my 4 decades at the university, which says that obviously I must be a jack of all trades and a master of none. In that time, while I was a professor, I did research for the EPA and the Pennsylvania Energy Department. I started research by doing something with Argonne National Laboratory on soil conservation over pipeline right-of-ways. And then from there, I went to doing research on greenhouse gas emissions for the state and for the EPA. And I kind of feel guilty in a way because I was in on that ground floor and I did Pennsylvania's study of greenhouse gas emissions that the EPA wrote a letter to me saying, we're going to use your study as a model for all the other states to follow. And that seemed fine at the time. And then as greenhouse gases got more politicized, I thought, oh, what have I wrought? What have I done? Because the world's going crazy over this. And it's becoming such a political football that it's not what my intention was. They had given me a task, and that's the task I did. And I went from that to doing research on green technologies for the state of Pennsylvania and how the state it was losing in the 90s 105,000 manufacturing jobs. And as you know, Pittsburgh was the heart of the steel industry. And there were steel mills in Pittsburgh that were like 3 or 4 miles long, and there were 50,000 workers doing that job. But that all died during the 70s, and then we ended up with all the problems of what do we do with all those so-called brownfields, and the state was looking to get into green technologies as a way to replace those jobs that it had lost. So Pennsylvania, and it's really interesting, I'll just mention this, and you have to, I guess, forgive me for being old and digressing, but Pennsylvania had 11.5 million people when I was growing up. It's the second most populous state. And it had only 12.5 million people at the end of the 1990s, only 1 million people difference. And the reason for that was all the young people were leaving because all the jobs were elsewhere. I mean, for a long time, kids grew up, their parents worked in the mill. They went ahead and worked in the mill. The jobs were right there in the town. Sure, they smelled of sulfur in the evenings, and there was coal dust everywhere, and probably everyone in my generation has some sort of black lung as a product of it because of all the coal in the area. But the state wanted me to do the green technology study, so I did that. And I did policy for the state on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And then eventually, since I'd done so many environmental studies for the Department of Environmental Protection in Pennsylvania, they asked me to do a study on all the effects underground mining had on any feature at the surface. So not only the land, but on buildings, utilities, everything. That was a pretty massive study I did for the state. And after I finished that, it was just before I retired. A very large coal company asked me to become a consultant. Actually, the summer that I retired, because they had a battle with the controlling entity in the state in Western Pennsylvania that looked over coal production. And there was a coal mine that was going to be shut down, and 500 miners were going to lose their jobs. Well, that has a multiplying effect. 500 miners lose their jobs, 6 other people lose their jobs, in support. And the reason for it was so-called high-quality stream. They wanted to go under. Now, I don't know if you know anything about longwall mining, but longwall mines, there's the old traditional way is the room and pillar, where they would people would go in and they would remove a large section of coal, but leave a pillar of coal to support the overlying ground. And then so the next room would then be mined, there'd be another pillar, etc. Well, when longwall mining was invented, you're looking at machines that could mine 1,200 feet wide by 2 miles. And as they didn't worry about subsidence, because as the machine moved, the ground above sank. Now, in Western Pennsylvania, mine subsidence has long been a problem because for over a century, the coal mines have been operating. And way back when, people were kind of ruthless in getting all the coal out. They didn't care. So what they did is they took the rooms of coal out, they went back and they took the stumps, the pillars out, and then there was always the potential for subsidence. Well, anyway, so I did study for the state on that, on the effects of longwall mining. And then when the coal company was shut down because the DEP said, well, you can't go underneath and move from one giant room, which is, as I said, 1,200 feet by 2 miles long. You can't move your equipment over to the next one because it would underlie a high-quality stream. Well, the coal company hired me because, and this is where things get a bit absurd. So I had a staff that I hired, and I went out and I looked to see what was going on with the mining and why they couldn't mine underneath this particular high-quality stream. So the first day I went, I looked at the stream with a biologist friend of mine, and it was a hot summer day, and there was water in the stream, and then we went on to see something like 3 or 4 other streams that were overlying that particular panel, as it's called. When we came back, something like 2 or 3 hours later, traipsing through the woods, the stream was no bigger than a puddle. It was not flowing, it was just a puddle. And so we took samples, and my biologist friend said, sure, there are organisms in there that are supposed to be representative of high-quality environments. But he said the state made sure that was going to happen because the state called organisms that you can find in an old car tire gathering rainwater as part of that high-quality environment. So 500 miners lost their jobs for a stream that was intermittent, that had virtually no water in it from one part of the afternoon to the later part of the afternoon. And I thought that was absurd. And so I did that consulting work. But after I had done, and that was a good bit of work, I said to my wife, well, wait a minute, I just retired. What am I doing working all these hours every day? So I basically stopped doing that kind of consulting, although I'm always open to do any kind of environmental consulting.
You laid out so much right there, and I had no idea that you did policy work. That's something I could talk to you about for ages. It will probably bore the audience to tears, because I love doing policy work in my own profession. It's frustrating at times, and I hear the absurdity of that. And when politics get involved, it's almost all over. Nothing makes sense. I